Small farms, big questions. Can subsistence feed us all?
Forget everything you think you know about agriculture. This is where seeds of information grow into fields of changing mindsets. Join us as we discuss your questions about agriculture right here on the ground. Hi, I am Farmer AD.
With Mrs. Farmer 80.
Hey there, welcome back on the ground with Farmer AD the podcast with yours truly, Farmer AD, and my dear partner, Mrs. Farmer AD.
Hi, I'm glad you could join us today, and you may be just having a lunch break, scrolling around YouTube, or maybe having coffee while checking our podcast. Perhaps you're already on your walking routine while listening to us.
In case you have missed our previous episodes, you can always check them in our YouTube channel, On the Ground with Farmer AD the podcast. In some of the other episodes, we have talked about the importance of farming because it is just basic for all of us since we all eat. But we also tackled the agriculture and farming in no longer just about food. We also have farming and agriculture producing materials for clothes, fuel, and even biodegradable plastic. A lot of things now can be traced from the farms, but food remains to be the largest and most urgent concern when we discuss agriculture and farming. Today, let's talk about an important question commonly asked in the Philippines. We have lots of small-scale landholder farmers, backyard gardening, urban gardening, etc. Here's the question. Is small-scale or subsistence farming enough as a solution for food security?
Before we dive into the nitty-gritty, let's clear the air. What exactly do we mean by small-scale and subsistence farming? Remember, not all chickens and carrots are created equal.
The difference? It's easy. When you say big farming, farming. And small farming, farming. You're right, Mama. My bad. Merriam-Webster defines subsistence farming as a system where families grow almost everything they need to survive, barely selling anything. Think grandpa's corn patch and grandma's heirloom tomatoes, enough for them, but not enough to feed the whole barangay. Simply put, it is the old ways where one family produces its own food, nothing for others. But now the question, who is going to feed the non-farmers? People in the city. People who have no time nor land to do it.
So it's like the self-sufficient life of my great-grandmother, right? Living off the land may have its advantages to people who are doing it. But is it a viable solution for food security? What about family farms then?
Exactly. But there's the rub. In today's bustling world, with city folks piling up like mangoes in season, this age-old method really feed everyone?
Can it?
Yeah, that's the problem. Wikipedia has a good explanation of family farm that zeroes in to the confusion. It says, a family farm is generally understood to be a farm owned and operated by the family. It is sometimes considered to be an estate passed down by inheritance. Furthermore, although the recurring conceptual and archetypal distinction is that a family farm as a small holding versus corporate farming as large-scale agribusiness, that notion does not accurately describe the realities of farm ownership in many countries. Furthermore, family farm business can take many forms, from smallholder farms to larger farms operated under intensive farming practices. In various countries, most farm families have structured their farm business as corporations, such as limited liability companies or trusts, for liability, tax, and business purposes. Thus, the idea of family farms as unitary concept or definition does not easily translate across language, cultures, or centuries, as there are substantial differences in agricultural tradition and histories between countries and between centuries within a country. For example, in US agriculture, a family farm can be of any size as long as the ownership is held within a family. Simply saying, ganito yon. A family farm is not necessarily subsistence farming operation. This term has been misused many times in agriculture, and it is used as a misinformation arguments to demonize large-scale farm operations. And the irony is, these same people who perpetuating this misinformation are still using a lot of things in our society that are from large farm
Farm.
operations.
Okay.
As a farmer, let me clarify that subsistence farming is not automatically the same as family farms. On the other hand, subsistence farming is all about where and who utilizes its product. It's subsistence farming. It is mainly or just the farmer and his family. So those who are not farmers, think again. Who is the one feeding you, clothing you, making your fuel?
That's a very interesting thing to distinguish, and it helps clear misconceptions about agriculture and farming. It removes that fairy tale idea or romantic notion of what farming could be.
Yes, it does. Also, humans sometimes or human societies have changed over the years, evolved into more complex forms. Needs have changed, systems and how people live have changed, so has agriculture. Farms and farmers no longer just produce food for themselves and have been developing along with the society, and we produce the larger family, which is the human race. So, it's like family farming, but the human race. Like I said before, if you are able to do something else other than produce your own food, someone else is doing that for you. And those are the farmers.
At this point, we'd like to say thanks to our donors. Because of them, we are able to produce this pilot season of our podcast. You know who you are and you want to remain anonymous. Just the same, we would like to say we appreciate you. If you're interested to sponsor our podcast, just reach out to us via email or through our personal social media accounts. Now back to our discussion. And that point really takes non-farmers back to appreciating who produces food, fiber, and fuel. So another related question is, what is commercial farming?
Commercial farming implies business or commerce. Not because people are just about money. Commercial farming is about or a product of development over time. It is the universal language. And agriculture has adapted that language, and commercial farming is the natural course of development to feed a growing population. In order to be effective and efficient, intensification is the direction. That is why we also have the term intensive agriculture. And oftentimes, the two are interchanged with, there are still some distinctions depending on the product or the commodity being produced. Intensive farming is not bad per se. Let me clarify that. Good or bad agriculture is not based on size or intensity. You can have small scale operation, but if your practice in farming will destroy the environment, that is still not good. Imagine a lake with 8 kilometer square kilometer lake. Put 1,000 small scale fish cage there, and that would be an environmental disaster. But just have one with intensive and efficient system that is strictly monitored and has specific conditions of limits. You can have a very productive food security contributor in fish production. Intensive agriculture can be safe and environmentally friendly. Example, yung corn. 1 hectare of corn can produce oxygen for 400 plus people for 1 year. Can capture solar energy and place it in organic battery we call starch. Battery or energy we use so we can do our work and live our lives. And I have been to Argentina and Uruguay. They use the no-till system of agriculture that is a very sound, environmentally friendly, large-scale, intensive operation. And yet, still environmentally friendly. And they are feeding us, including us in the Philippines. Because their
Wow.
product is reaching our Sure.
Wow, that is such a great information to know. A big difference from what you see flooding the internet and the noise saying big ag is bad. They destroy the environment, yada yada yada. When the reality is quite the opposite.
Yes, farmers do not have a lot of time talking about what they do, you know. Obviously, because they are farming and feeding the same people who talk negatively about them. And that
Ironic.
is why good to have conversation with a farmer, like what you're doing now, or visit a farm, or just catch our podcast and you'll learn and hear from a farmer.
On the ground. So, one last question for you, Farmer 80. What is corporate farming?
That is another dangerously or dangerous term being used by non-farmers to speak their language of ideology. But for our podcast, let me try to define. Corporate farms as a phrase means farming operation that is registered as a corporation.
Mm-hmm.
It can be private corporation or it can be public. Family farms nowadays are required to be a corporation for business and taxation.
I see.
The misuse of the term corporate farm is when it means giant greedy corporation operating and lobbying for profit and more profits. Yung kasi yung karaniwang ginagamit pag sinabing corporate farms, parang may mga sungay. Selfish intentions ang yung pinupuntira. Just feeding oneself of profits or feeding the self. Let me pause there. Can you see the some of the correlation what we were talking about subsistence farming earlier?
Yes.
Again, back to what I'm saying, corporate farm is one of the term being used by ideologies to attack agriculture and sometimes even farmers. The term itself is not bad, but how it is inserted and used oftentimes in discussions about food and the evils of corporations. Now, here's some interesting data. Check the data of the USDA. 98% of farms in the US are family farms.
Really?
Only 2% are, let's say, corporate farms. Registered as corporations, of course, and 90% of agriculture land are operated by family farms. The small family farms and the large scale family farms.
And guess what? Most farm families, even the small ones, don't operate in isolation. They might sell their produce, hire workers, collaborate with neighbors. It's a whole ecosystem, not just some lone farmer in the field.
Yes, and but still, can these small operations, even when they work together, really feed a growing population? I don't think the answer. It's like relying on just one crop to survive. That's risky and unstable.
Well, don't get me wrong, small scale farming has its charms. Fresh, organic food, self reliance, the satisfaction of seeing your hard work on your plate. But for food security, we need more efficiency and a system that adapts to changing needs.
That's where commercial farming come in. Now, before you grab your pitchfork, hear me out. These larger operations, if done responsibly, can produce vast amounts of food efficiently, reaching more people. They also invest in research, technology, infrastructure, which benefits everyone in the food chain.
But isn't there a flip side? What about environmental concerns, exploitation of workers, unfair competition for smaller farms? We can't ignore those.
Absolutely. That's why it's crucial to those responsible, sustainable farming practices no matter the scale. It's not about big versus small, but about good or versus bad. Both large and small farms can be environmentally friendly and contribute to food security as long as they operate ethically and efficiently.
So the answer isn't a simple one size fits all. We need a diverse farming landscape with different scales and systems working together like a well balanced salad.
That's true. That's correct. It's all about collaboration, innovation, and respecting the land and the people who feed us.
Remember, folks, whoever grows your food deserves respect and appreciation. So the next time you bite into that juicy fruit or mango, whatever is on season, take a moment to thank the hands that nurtured it, no matter how big or small the farm they come from.
Now, in order to be food secure, food system must be sustainable. In order to be sustainable, it should be viable. Must be able to continue producing repeatedly. The way we can do that is to enable our farmers and farm to produce effectively, efficiently, and in some cases, we need to intensify. We need to survive the economic system, therefore, we have to be profitable. It should function as an enterprise and an operation that produces and sells and produce again. Now, subsistence farming is not in this system. It does not feed others. It does not turn a profit. It remains to be alien to an ever-changing society. It is seriously outmoded and irrelevant. Not to say that it is evil or bad, but for issues of food security, the transformation and the updating of farming system is the key to sustainable and more food secure systems.
And that's a healthy cycle of producing, marketing for gainful return so that in turn, farmers can produce more and sustain their livelihood to feed the community. And I think that's where technology is a welcome addition to the agricultural systems. But that's another topic for our next podcast, right, Farmer
Yes,
80?
that's another topic. And by the way, I asked my dear friend, a farmer from Uruguay, Gabriel Carballal, what he can say about what we are discussing now. Let's let us hear his reply to me.
I think the scale, the size matters, right? Especially in this business where we are. The business is changing. Used to be based on labor, on human strength, and right now is much more based on markets, on technology, on GMOs, on GPS, on all that new technologies that helps us to decrease costs, right? We are selling our products at a really low price. If we compare the price today, even when it's higher in US dollars, if you compare to a current exchange, right, it is a lot cheaper than a century ago. So the products are getting cheaper and cheaper. So what do you have to fight that? You have to improve a lot your costs, right? We have to be, as Marcos says always, we have to be the world champions in low costs. So how do you do that? Using technology. Using technology. You can decrease your costs, or you can decrease your costs doing more efficient things and producing more kilograms or units per hectare or per area, right?
Thank you, Gabriel, for sharing that reply. And we would hear more about what Gabriel is doing as he shares to us about the large operations and what their advice would be for the Filipino farmers who might be doing small scale farming operations. Again, thank you, Gabriel, for joining us on this podcast.
Thank you for joining us on the ground
I am Farmer 80
with Mrs. Farmer 80.
on our podcast where the seeds of knowledge are sprouting.
Keep it grounded
Keep it rooted.
and keep it growing.
Until next time.
Please subscribe.